13 years ago, I was in my first year, in my first semester in college. I studied history and English, and I was really curious about philosophy. I decided to go and check out just one single class, and just to see what it's like. I looked at the classes that were offered, and chose the one class that fit my schedule. Friday afternoon, 2 p.m., a class called Ethics and Systems Theory. So I went to the class, and when I was sitting there and listening to this lecture, I thought, wow, this is amazing. Philosophy is amazing, and this professor is amazing. And of course, this professor was Dr. Stegmaier. After this, I decided to make philosophy my major, and once I was in the department, I realized that if I had gone to a class of any of the other professors, I would have never ever studied philosophy. One of this professor was this really boring logic guy. Another one was this crazy confusing art professor. So the only reason I ever got into philosophy was this coincidence that I went to Dr. Stegmaier's amazing lecture. And since then, I've studied philosophy with him, learned about the philosophy of orientation, and became a student. Two and a half years ago, another huge coincidence happened in my life, which changed everything. I was a PhD student at UT Austin, and I got an email from somebody called Steve. And Steve asked me if I was the translator of one of Dr. Stegmaier's articles, and if I had any more translations for him. I told him, yeah, that's me, I'm the translator, and I told him that there are only very few texts so far that are translated. And since this email was really short, and it only said, I'm Steve from Nashville at the end, I asked him, are you a grad student? And he responded, no, I'm not, but I'm reaching out for my boss, who is really into philosophy, and who loves this paper that you wrote. And he wants more of this philosophy, and he wants to give you a call sometime. So Mike Hodges calls me and said that he wants to fly down to Austin and meet with me. So all this was really strange. My ex-girlfriend got really worried and told me, was worried about this guy called Mike Hodges, and told me, be careful, don't go in the car with him. So when we met in Austin, I could tell that Mike had read this paper about 20 times. And he asked me very specific questions about it. So we talked in the Starbucks for about 4 hours, philosophizing about this philosophy of orientation, and suddenly he said, oh, I gotta catch my flight back to Nashville. So we decided then that I translate this German orientation book, and then about 1 year later, we decided that we want to start this foundation. And the most curious thing about this whole story is that Mike said that he just became a member of the Nietzsche Society, and that the very first edition of the Journal of Nietzsche Studies that he had ever received as a member was the exact one where my translation of Dr. Stegmaier's article was in. So if he had become a member just a little bit later, he would have never studied, he would have never ever read this article, and we would not be here. So both these very unlikely events led me to stand here right now and be a part of this foundation that we're starting. And I'm very thankful and very honored that I can be a part of this. And especially I'm thankful to Dr. Stegmaier for fascinating me for philosophy 13 years ago. And thank you, Mike Hodges, for getting all this here started. For an opportune moment, it suddenly appears out of nowhere, and that you have to seize at the right time and act upon. The ancient Greeks had a term and connected it with a god. They called it kairos. The god Kairos is portrayed as somebody who has long hair only in the front, but the back of his hair is shaved. He moves so fast that you cannot see him coming. And when he's there, you have to grasp him by the hair right away. Because if you think too long, he's going to turn around and you only get the back of his head. and you can't grasp anything anymore. So he will run away, and the opportune moment has passed. So a chain of big coincidences have led us here, that we are standing here right now. However, starting this foundation is also an opportune moment, just like Kairos. A great opportunity to grasp, and one that must be seized in the right moment. Orientation is precisely about this, how we always encounter new, unforeseen, and surprising situations in life. Orientation is, as we define it, the achievement of finding one's way successfully in a new situation. But every situation is somewhat new. In every moment in life, something unforeseen and surprising can happen. And for whatever we encounter, we look, view, and scan the situation for whether it leads to advantages or disadvantages, whether there are any promising opportunities to act. But for whether an opportunity is promising or not, we only ever have clues, indicators, leads, and footholds. We can never achieve full certainty, since every situation is unsurveyable and may change from one moment to the next. Since time is always pressing, we always run the risk of letting an opportune moment pass by without a second chance. To quote directly from our book, "For what makes an opportunity, there is no higher criterion. It arises now for this situation in this, it is an opportunity only in this situation. A slight change of circumstances can already make a situation look worse again." Quote end. And we nevertheless always have to act. We always have to make decisions under the pressure of time. Since we always have to act under uncertainty and time pressure, any decision and any orientation is always somewhat risky and dangerous, and it therefore requires courage. And it also requires courage to seize and grasp an opportunity at the right time, without ever having the certainty that one will be successful. And since orientation and making decisions is always risky, we have added to our logo the motto, "Fearless Findings." So what are we going to do at this foundation? What are the aims and the plans of this foundation? First of all, we want to make the philosophy of orientation accessible to the English-speaking audience. For this, we have translated the original German book, which is 800 pages long, Philosophie der Orientierung, and translated into this abridged, updated version, What is Orientation? A Philosophical Investigation. And as you, I think, know, there will be a book signing over here at the end after these speeches by Dr. Stegmaier, and you're invited to come here. Second, we have composed 3 guides to the philosophy of orientation, which will also be available for you after these speeches. And these are A, successful modes of orientation, 15 conclusions from the philosophy of orientation for your everyday life. It's a 4-page summary of the cash value of this philosophy. And then B, we have the guide called Fearless Findings, 25 footholds for the philosophy of orientation. And it's a 20-page summary of the main points of the philosophy of orientation. And then C, the booklet called Courageous Beginnings, 25 situations of new orientations in the history of philosophy, which is a 110-page overview of how this philosophy has been prepared for in the history of philosophy. Third, we provide an orientation glossary on our website with so far 29 entries. It just went online yesterday, and we are planning to expand this glossary as an orientation wiki that also includes entries about philosophers that are relevant, as well as new research about the philosophy of orientation. But we consider all these texts only as the starting point for the research about human orientation. Second, we want to support and facilitate more research about the conditions and structures of human orientation, and thus produce more knowledge about the complexity of our everyday life. What makes this philosophy unique is that its terminology managed to bring together the different academic disciplines, various professional fields of orientation, as well as it deals with existential questions. And therefore, third, we also want to go beyond the academic community and reach the general public. We want to include professionals from all different fields and bring in their orientation skills and orientation virtues. Orientation also involves the dimension of success. Some ways of orienting oneself are more successful than other ways. Some ways of abbreviating the world are more efficient and innovative than others. And as such, we want to emphasize the practical dimension of this philosophy so that it does not just remain a theory. But in all this, we have no political, ideological, or religious interests. But this philosophy is instead about reflecting how different standpoints come into being, and this is the ability which we need most today. For these goals, we are planning a variety of projects and formats that we will continually develop step by step in the coming years. And we invite all different kinds of orientations to participate in them. And you can find all this information coming soon on our website, hfpo.com. So on the one hand, we want to promote more research about human orientation. For this, we're starting off with our, as you have probably seen already, our philosophical prize competition, which will from now on take place every year, drawing on the Enlightenment tradition of asking philosophical questions highly relevant for our current societal developments. Our first question is, how does the digitization of our world change our orientation? And we allow 1 year for submissions of any length, from any perspective. And the deadline is 1 year from today, October 25th, 2020. The best contribution will receive $25,000, the second best $15,000, the third best $10,000, and we will provide a special student award of $5,000 if there's no student among the top 3. Second, we will offer annual dissertation fellowships for PhD students whose research projects relate to the philosophy of orientation. We offer $30,000 for 12-month fellowships, and we want to start in the next academic year, 2020-21. We want to organize research clusters here in Nashville, which bring in both professors and students from various academic disciplines to cooperate for up to a few years, investigating specific subjects of societal orientation, something like power, democracy, government, and so on. We want to organize expert discussion forums where we invite leading experts from different fields here to Nashville to discuss and produce innovative philosophical orientations concerning the most relevant scientific and societal problems. And with our what we call Opus Magnum project, we want to support outstanding scholars to finish writing their main work, especially if this work promises foundational reorientations and new beginnings in philosophy. And in the future, we want to establish a journal of orientation studies that publishes international research on orientation from both the humanities and the natural sciences. On the other hand, we are planning multiple projects that go beyond academia and are designed to reach the general public. First, we want to organize lecture series and podcasts about orientation-related topics and philosophers. Second, we're planning a summer school to take place every year here in Nashville, again, not only for college students, but also for the general public. Third, we plan to establish a leadership program to further orientation skills and orientation virtues that are required for successful leadership. And this is for both established and future leaders. And fifth, we plan to create a book series called Game Changers that entails reports on and interviews with outstanding individuals who have in groundbreaking ways reoriented the structures of their societal orientation worlds. And in the future, we want to establish an open access publishing house where we publish the results of all our different activities. So prize competitions, dissertations, main work programs, and so on, online and for free. And everyone, any perspective and orientation is invited to these projects to participate. And we especially admire and want to support new courageous beginnings in philosophical orientations. So this foundation, ladies and gentlemen, is an opportune moment to seize and to grasp right here, right now. And where else would we grasp this moment than here in Nashville, here in the Athens of the South, here in the Parthenon in front of Athena? Thank you.